Development at Oracle and responsible for the Oracle E-Business Suite. Today I wanted to update you on what we've done on your behalf in 2018 in the E-Business Suite product line. So in our last year, we've focused on a number of investment themes, really the most important of which is doing the enhancements that our customers have been asking for, so we'll cover that in more detail. We also have a new set of capabilities called Enterprise Command Centers, which are very exciting and will be available for a number of products in the E-Business Suite. We've continued to progress on HTML and mobility capabilities. We've also responded to some changes in the legislative environment around data privacy and some accounting standards, and we've continued to progress the automation we have to help you run some or all of your E-Business Suite environments on our cloud infrastructure. So let me make a couple comments about how we are getting feedback from customers and incorporating it into our process. We have what are called support communities. They're on the My Oracle support site. And it really allows you to have a social networking process to give us feedback about what you'd like to see in the applications. And you do that in conjunction with other customers. There's a way to create a new idea, to vote up or down on someone else's idea, to comment on it, maybe to comment on some design aspect of it that maybe need to be extended to handle what your business needs. And ultimately, that all goes together, and we look at all that material and deciding what to do in given releases. So you'll see, and as we go through the presentation, you'll see a little light bulb icon in the upper right for enhancements that we're doing because they were voted on in the support communities. Now, another interesting thing about 2018 is that we have done not only our annual functional update release 12.2.8, but we've actually delivered a number of capabilities even earlier than 12.2.8. So the command centers are coming along really alongside 12.2.8, but we've had a mobile release. We've released what we call the person data removal tool for regulatory compliance. We have some accounting standards updates that we provided. We've done an HR legislative update, which had some new features in it as well, and some improvements to our cloud infrastructure automation. And all of those things are not strictly tied to the 12.2.8 delivery. So we really have 12.2.8 and a number of other things in the same time frame that you can all take advantage of. So let's turn to the substance of what we've delivered. So let's turn first with some of the user experience and mobility capabilities we've added. And the first one to talk about here is really what we call Enterprise Command Centers. So the idea behind Enterprise Command Centers is that you're going to be able to identify and act on high priority transactions without conventional operational reporting. So this is really about being able to get to the important transactions to work on without having to make every one of those a custom report to find out what the important things are. So what does this let you do? You can start in a particular area with a dashboard that shows you a number of graphical or some charts as well as key indicators, potentially tag clouds, search refinements, a lot of different ways to browse and drill and search and filter. And each time you select one of those, the entire interface recalculates based on the filters that you've applied. So with each drill down, you essentially you have a conversation with your data. You get new data that you haven't seen before, restricted to the scope of the filters you've already applied. And then as you get interested in another indicator value, you click on that and further filtering and refinement occurs. And through that process, you zero in on the most important things for you to work on. And then from there, there's always a set of transactions that relate to those indicator values that are part of that data scope that you can immediately drill to, and from there navigate to the transaction system to take appropriate action. So this is something that let me just walk you through an example of it just to make that idea more concrete. So let's start with a conventional invoice aging report type of use case. We're just trying to find the late invoices and call the right customer to get paid. So you start out with some dashboard that shows you some indicator values, but also some charts that indicate essentially the aging buckets by organization. So in our case, we want to find the oldest aging bucket, the over 90 days bucket, and we'll focus on the organization with the largest over 90-day balance. Now when we click on that, everything is recalculated and we find the customers listed in terms of the balance they have in that bucket. So we have now the top customer for who has the highest value in that organization for over 90-day invoices. So now when we click on that customer, we've now applied, just with 2 clicks, we've applied several filters to our data restriction here. One is that you're in this particular operating unit. The other is that you have an over 90-day bucket. The third is that you're focused on the customer with the largest balance. Now with that data scope, you can now look at the transactions that make up that balance for that customer. You can click on a particular one of those transactions, let's say the largest one, there's the invoice. So with just really 3 clicks, you got to learn which customer invoice is the largest one in your oldest aging bucket for the operating unit with the biggest over 90 days receivables outstanding. And there you can call the customer on that and try to resolve the issue and get paid. So that's the paradigm we're following. Now, where have we done this? We have it in several areas in financials, receivables, payables, and assets, and we'll come back to that to talk a little bit more about the business cases that we support in all those different areas. In the supply chain area, we have it in order management, inventory management, and enterprise asset management. Now, some important things to understand are around delivery of this. Probably the most important thing to understand is that you are entitled to this on 12.2. We have it only available on 12.2, but you're entitled to this on 12.2 without any additional licensing costs. It's included in the licenses of the base products. So there's nothing new to buy here. And it's also integrated with EBS user interface and security. So unlike doing a conventional warehouse project, or what happens if you buy a conventional, just a third-party reporting tool, is that this is already set up so that all these totals and balances and drill downs that you can get are already restricted to the data scope that you've already set up in eBusiness Suite for this user to be able to see. So there's no parallel setup of security or authorization or of what data someone can see. That's already set up and integrated with EBS security. Now all these are put together with a new UI framework we have that we call the Enterprise Command Center framework. Initially, we are just delivering these dashboards as is. As we go forward, we'll be looking to support custom development and extension using that framework, but that's not there in the initial delivery. Now, shifting gears a little bit to the smartphones mobility area, we have a number of smartphone apps that are horizontal, meaning apply to people in any type of industry or business focused around self-service. We also have some line of business smartphone apps that are really the core applications that you would use if you were a field service technician, a maintenance technician, somebody with an inventory processing type of job in doing counting operations and supply chain, with their mobile supply chain apps. And we have some more casual line of business type activities, more for casual access to check an inventory balance or the status of an order. So to remind you, the key design points of all these smartphone apps are that there's also no cost. They're available as alternate user interfaces for users who are licensed for the underlying product. Unlike the Command Center dashboards, these are available for both 12.1 and 12.2, so you don't even need to upgrade to start using our smartphone apps. They're available for iOS and Android, built with our internal mobile application framework as part of our middleware. And importantly, we support now standards-based enterprise mobility management frameworks. Now, we deliver these applications and you can just use them very simply if they meet your needs. We also publish the underlying APIs that we use that these applications call. So if you'd like to use either our mobility framework or another one to build your own mobile applications, and then have those access EBS data, maybe to make a mashup application that has some EBS data and some data from another system that's not EBS in a single mobile app, we give you the APIs you need to be able to do that. So one of the things that's new in smartphone apps in the mobile release 8, which is kind of part of this time frame that we're talking about, is that we've simplified the login process. So if you are using an enterprise mobility management framework, and most customers who are deploying these are, we've made it so that the user doesn't have to know a server URL to connect to or anything like that. You can register that and set that up as part of the mobility management framework, and the user just has to supply a username and password the way they would expect to. So shifting gears now to functionality in the different product areas, let's start with, we're going to go around all the different product areas. So let's start with financials. We've had a very active period in financials. We had a lot of very important new functionality to talk about. Some of it is response to the regulatory environment. Some of it's better user interface and feature function improvements that customers have asked for. So let's start out with some of the regulatory changes. There's a standard that comes into place that in the beginning of 2019 is a requirement, both internationally under IFRS 16 and in the U.S. GAAP under ASC 842. So these are two different regulations that basically say the same thing, that you now have to treat leases that you have in a different way. You're required to put leases on your balance sheet, which means that rather than just accounting for your lease obligations payment by payment, just as the current payment that's going out is just a current expense and that's all there is to it, the new requirement is that you establish on your balance sheet a liability for all the payments you're going to make under that lease and a corresponding asset called a right of use asset. And you're going to basically amortize that asset, and you're going to accrue against that liability for the payments that you're making on the lease. So it basically means you have to go back and find all of those leases for all of the equipment that you're leasing or even office space or anything, and create these balance sheet items for those leases. Even if you're part of the way through the lease, this is not a go-forward requirement. It requires you to do this for your existing leases that are in flight, and then make the right amortization schedules and accounting entries. So this is really a pretty big deal. Now, this applies in several different dimensions. One is for real estate leases. If you are either a lessor of a whole set of properties, or you're a lessee of a whole set of properties, if you're like a department store and you have a lot of chains or branches in different buildings that you lease, or if you're a lessor, you're a developer and you're leasing out the properties that you built, that's what Oracle Property Manager is for, specialized in the real estate-oriented requirements. On the equipment side, if you're a lessor, meaning you build big expensive equipment and you lease it to your customers, it's essentially vendor financing. For that problem, we have a specialized product called Oracle Lease and Finance Management. And that is the right thing to be using if you're in that situation. But for the vast majority of regular businesses that are not focused either in the property business or or leasing their products to customers, that is being a lessee of equipment. So for example, if you just lease a copier, or you lease a vehicle in your business, or you just lease some office space, you have a more casual lease requirement, but you still have to comply with this standard. So for lessees of equipment, we have created a new solution. It's based on leveraging some of that functionality that we built in Property Manager for how to do this accounting, but we're making this available to users, to people who've licensed Oracle Financials without having to license Property Manager or any other product. It's basically part of your ongoing support that you're paying for financials. You're entitled to get this solution that solves this accounting problem for you, just as a licensee of Oracle Financials. So let me explain kind of what that does. What you do is you capture certain details about each lease, some of the basic parameters about the lease, some information about the discount rate that's going to be used, the interest rates that you're going to use to capitalize to create the right of use asset. Some things about the payment terms, renewal details and options and so forth, and you enter corresponding things about the physical asset itself to set it up as an asset on your balance sheet. And after you enter all of this, what the solution does is it calculates for you the amortization schedule of that right of use asset, and it will make all those accounting entries for you in your financials, both the amortization entries and the payments against the liability you have for your lease obligation. So it's something that essentially every customer needs to comply with. As you work with your finance department to figure out how you're complying with this solution, which is really just included now with eBusiness Suite, is something that you can take advantage of. This applies to both 12.1 and 12.2. So it's not something you have to upgrade to get this solution. You could basically get this on the release that you're on, and use this to meet the requirement that you have in 2019. Now, shifting gears to it, we've already talked about kind of a little demonstration of the Receivables Command Center. Let me talk just a little bit about more what you can do there. We talked about sort of how that might replace, in effect, your invoice aging report, where you'd look up important things that are late invoices to call on, but it does a lot more than that. You can resolve billing process bottlenecks. You can understand why you have payment exceptions, discrepancies, things on hold, things are disputed. You can zero into all sorts of invoices that are in different classes have different classes of problems that might be impairing your ability to collect from your customer. So analyzing overdue balances, credit memos, adjustments, things that you need both to close your books and to understand discrepancies with cash application or something that could be causing a problem collecting with your customer. It helps you zero in on all those types of problems to have more efficient receivables operation and collect your money better. We've similarly in payables, we have focused on how to optimize invoice processing and make sure you effectively utilize discounts. So the idea really in payables is that by visualizing these different indicators and groupings that we have, you can accelerate payments to capture discounts. So you want to pay early enough to capture discounts, but you don't want to pay before you need to if there's not a discount involved. So helping you avoid early payments or prepayments that aren't really necessary and yet pay on time to capture discounts is really what we're trying to help you optimize here. There's also a cash flow management aspect of payables where you want to be able to forecast or estimate when you're going to need to have cash on hand, and actually in different, for businesses that operate internationally, cash on hand in different currencies. So being able to forecast your cash need in different currencies is a capability you get with this dashboard. And then just from a supplier relationship point of view, you can analyze invoices that are on hold for different reasons that might otherwise cause you to be late paying a supplier. That'll help you improve your relationship with that supplier. And if there have been recent payments made, you can understand the status of those. So if you're trying to tell the supplier that you paid lately and that they should be receiving it, you can understand the status of those payments just to help you have a smoother relationship with your suppliers. In assets, we have a new command center that's focused on improving how you manage and do your accounting and fixed assets. Simple benefit is being able to basically speed up your processing, do reconciliations better, clear pending transactions that might be holding up or complicating the period close, your reclassification of assets, transferring of assets, other things that might have some kind of pending status. You can visualize all of those, zero in on those so that you'll have a smoother close process. You can also manage and forecast what's going to happen as you capitalize assets. So you may have assets that you've acquired that you're going to be capitalizing and starting depreciation for as you put them in use, and you can monitor and forecast those capitalization events, and you can understand how the fact that you're going to be having a new big asset on your balance sheet and begin depreciating it might be affecting some of your financial indicators. And then there's just the aspect of increasing the efficiency of asset utilization. You can find assets that you have that are not assigned to anyone, or things that are not at the location they're supposed to be at. So just as simple as where are all my laptops? Do I have laptops that are still not depreciated and under warranty but aren't assigned to anybody? Are there laptops that are in the wrong location for the organization they're supposed to belong to? Those kinds of things. So you can basically make more effective use of your assets using the information you can get from this command center. In the credit management area, we've added a capability, and this is one that the customers have asked for to improve the ability to use certain metrics in your scoring of how you score. You're doing credit scoring for your customers. So, for example, you might want to capture some financial ratios associated with your customers, maybe a debt equity ratio or interest coverage ratio, or something that kind of indicates their proxy for their ability to pay and their credit worthiness. You can capture these kinds of data elements in a new descriptive flex field we provide called the Credit Financial Data Descriptive Flex Field. You can basically choose whichever ones you want, and then we carry that information forward as you cycle through versions of the credit application. If basically you start with a version, they update it later on, all this data can carry forward from one version of that to the next. So the next area to talk about is channel revenue management, which is functionality we have for distributors and for manufacturers who sell through dealer networks. And so some of the key functionality we have here is to give customers in those businesses more control over the accounting they do for rebate programs and other trade promotions. An example of this would be the reconciliation of overpaid offers. So if you have, if your dealers are paying you based on their assumption about how they're going to do in a promotion campaign, if they turn out to be a little bit off when you finally tally up the actual promotions, you may just want to say that's okay and reconcile your promotion accounting to reflect that you've received that they've discounted the correct amount, or you're willing to accept the amount that they did in discounting. Again, this is functionality that's requested by people who really rely on their dealer networks relationships for their core business. So this is something that frequently comes up in that context. So we support that. There are a number of other open capability or new capabilities we have in this area, and channel revenue management customers can benefit from those. In the order management product family, we've had a number of new capabilities, including a new command center, so let's start with that. With the order management command center, the idea is to help you expedite your order processing by identifying bottlenecked orders, stuck orders, things that as the order management professional you want to resolve. You might identify orders that could be shipped early. If you have orders that are facing fulfillment obstacles, you can, for example, change the source warehouse or maybe change the freight carrier to help get the order delivered on time to the customer. Also, if you're going to have late orders, that you can get early visibility to that so that you can manage the customer relationship if you're going to have to ship an order late. If there's orders that aren't shipping because they're on hold for different reasons, you can drill in and understand the reasons that the order is on hold and clear those up so you can ship on time. Now, within the order management core functionality, we have some new capabilities, again, customer requested, to let you manage orderability by customer class. So if you think of if you're making a product, you may have certain ways you package that product that are only applicable to the wholesale trade and others that you might sell at retail. Or to a certain class of customers. Maybe there's a certain SKU that you only ship to big box retailers like Costco or Sam's Club. And so the way that you've had to do this previously, would you have to go in for each customer, you could establish a rule about which SKUs are available to be sold to that customer. So you have to go and find those customers individually and set that up. Now you can create a class of customers like big box retailers and then all at once assign certain SKUs to be sold only to that class of customers. In quoting, we have a new Web ADI-based interface to upload quotes off of a spreadsheet or quote lines off of a spreadsheet just to make that process more efficient. Now, turning to logistics, we have a number of capabilities that are new in this area. We've been innovating well in this the whole time in the 12.2 code line. We have a new inventory management command center. Here the idea is to optimize your order release and fulfillment operations. So you want to prioritize late orders and back orders. You want to make sure that you're synchronizing your releases with carrier appointments that you have. A certain truck is arriving at a certain time and you want to make sure you've got all the deliveries ready to go on that truck. You can schedule dock doors based on availability. You can if you're going to place an order, make a tender essentially to a carrier to say, I need to ship this much weight or this much volume. You can calculate your future deliveries in terms of weight and volume and see what you're going to be needing to do at a certain point in the future so that you can tender by weight and volume to your carriers. Sometimes the carriers will send the wrong truck. If they do, then you need to modify the shipment so you can accommodate the truck that they sent. So those kind of operations are all easy to do with the command center to improve the efficiency of your logistics operations and allow you to act on exceptions more effectively. Another capability we've added functionally in inventory is to improve our integration with our best-in-class transportation management solution. So what you're able to do in 12.2.7 is to let the transportation management solution, you can send delivery lines and it will create the shipments and can establish multi-leg routing for those shipments. And EBS can accept back from transportation all of that information and make it visible within inventory. Before, there's certain things you had to do to define those deliveries ahead of time before you send them to transportation management. And if you got a multi-leg routing back from transportation management, you only had visibility into the first leg of it. So we solved all of that, and with 12.2.8 now you have a very clean integration with transportation management to leverage all of its great capabilities. We've continued to progress our HTML user interfaces and modernize those. So in the inventory area, we've had a receiving UI in HTML formatted to work nicely on a tablet that you'd use out on a receiving dock, as opposed to the older Oracle Forms-based Java interface. And so that interface this whole screen was introduced earlier in 12.2. The thing that's newest now is that if you are trying to look for an item, because you're querying up the item you're going to receive, you can now start typing either the item designator itself or a description, and the field, the query will essentially it's like a type-ahead query, where as you type, it restricts the values to match, and so you can easily find the inventory item that you're trying to receive. In warehouse management, we've now got a new HTML user interface that formerly required Oracle Forms. Really, this replaces what we used to call the warehouse control board and gives you some better overall views of information than you had in the more limited prior interface. So turning our attention now to the procurement area. In iProcurement, we have some new flows that we support, and one of them is for non-catalog requests. So here the idea is that the requisitioner is buying something that's not in the catalog, potentially from a supplier you don't already do business with. And so what we added in 12.2.7 to support this was to let the buyer, that requisitioner, invite the supplier to register in iSupplier portal with their information so they could be established as a regular supplier to your business. The new capability we added in 12.2.8 is to allow that requester to provide that supplier information themselves if they have it. So that is the flow around non-catalog requests. Similarly, we have a flow that we introduced earlier in 12.2 called Spot Buy. This is a flow that is introduced for situations where you have, let's say, a bank branch or a store location, and that location has a manager. There may be certain types of procurement that you want to let that manager do without going through the corporate procurement function of establishing suppliers and so forth. For example, if they need to fix a broken window and just hire a local contractor in the area to do that, that person wouldn't be already set up as a supplier in your corporate procurement system. So that flow is established at the 12.2.6 level of EBS. In 12.2.7, we made it so that privileged requester can create the supplier for one-time use. So I'm going to create a PO for fixing a window. I'm going to enter the contractor information, and on a one-time use basis, just for that transaction, if I have the authority, I can go ahead and create that PO and issue it without getting kind of corporate procurement involved in establishing that as a permanent supplier. Now, you also, at that point, that requisitioner could have invited that supplier to register. So I figure I'm going to do business with this contractor again. So I tell them, why don't you register, and that you be one of our corporate suppliers. The new flow we've introduced in 12.2.8 is for that requester to actually do that registration activity, enter that registration information themselves. That then goes through an approval process in procurement and becomes established as a corporate supplier. So a lot of new flexibility around procurement business processes to handle sophisticated use cases like Spot Buy. Another capability we added in the procurement area is in sourcing. So here the idea is that you often go through a process and you make an award to the winner of a process, and then either because of a challenge or because of something else that comes up, that bid doesn't work out. And what you want to do at that point is essentially reopen the negotiation transaction and re-award the contract to basically whoever came in second, to another bidder in that situation. And we now support doing that without having to re-enter a bunch of information. Another capability we have in procurement around iSupplier Portal is, and this again, very sophisticated customers requesting these capabilities, is to have the concept of supplier representatives and supplier brokers recognized. So, for example, if I am a global construction company and I source steel pipe in different countries from the same supplier, in effect, I'm doing business with multiple different legal entities. So rather than having each of those have to go set themselves up as a supplier in iSupplier Portal, you could that supplier of pipe views our construction company as a global customer. So they may have a global representative who can represent on behalf of all their subsidiaries when they're going to be able to fulfill orders or maintain the supplier shipping information, so forth. Invoicing information, everything you do in iSupplier Portal, they may be able to do that on behalf of all of their international subsidiaries. So now we support the idea of that delegation model in iSupplier Portal, where a supplier representative can operate on behalf of subsidiaries. There's another use case where in some cases a distributor will operate on behalf of many suppliers. So let's suppose that you have a specialized material that you're ordering. There may be a distributor of that material who sources it from many different suppliers in different countries, but you as the construction company deal just with the distributor, and you say, get me a certain amount of some metal, and then that distributor goes out and sources it, and you can allow that distributor now to operate on behalf of those suppliers in iSupplier Portal. So we call that the iSupplier Portal broker or supplier broker feature. So now support those things as of the 12.2.8 release level. Final activity in procurement is around contract lifecycle management. This is really functionality specialized for the public sector, particularly government procurement. We support some advanced flows in this area around more flexibility to define acquisition milestones and have visibility of the workload assignments that are going on in the organization. We also have more support for standards-based ways of importing historical information into contract lifecycle management. Okay, switching gears to projects now, there's a couple of things we've done. On the project billing side, one of the accounting standards that we've been adapting to is a new revenue recognition accounting standard. Internationally, that's known as IFRS 15. Within the US GAAP, it's ASC 606. And what this requires is that you capture contractual performance obligations in a project. You track progress against those performance obligations, and you recognize revenue once you satisfy those performance obligations. So this is essentially now a feature of project billing. If you have revenue recognition needs that extend beyond the project context, if you're a software company, for example, and you have a lot more than projects that deals with revenue recognition, that's when you need to engage with our Revenue Management Cloud solution. But if you're just doing projects, you could get what you need inside the project billing module. Another capability we have in projects really on the costing side is an asset capitalization workbench, which is an HTML UI that lets you get visibility into the construction in progress expenses that you're accumulating toward the point when you're going to put an asset into use and capitalize it. So you can track a lot of information that was actually in different UIs and kind of hard to pull together previously, kind of in one place to give you visibility and the ability to perform actions and drill down to all the transactions that make up essentially an asset that you're building up progress payments and capital to toward the placing that asset in service. Okay, turning now to manufacturing, both discrete and process manufacturing, we have some interesting enhancements there. We've had support for outsourced manufacturing for discrete industries. We now have full outsourcing support for process industries. So what this means is that if you have a certain part of the operation, or if you have entire parts of your supply that are provided by subcontractors, if they make some of your products, What you want is to have visibility into what that subcontractor is doing from a number of perspectives. You want to understand where your inventory is with that subcontractor or that outsourced partner. You want to understand the quality levels they're producing. You want to understand what invoices they're likely to send you. What is the status of the orders that you have, maybe to send material to them or to receive finished goods from them. So we now let you do all of those things. And we support a number of different business models that are in practice where, depending on how you want to set it up, maybe you literally sell materials to this outsourced partner, they add value to it, they sell the finished goods back to you, or maybe you maintain title during certain parts of that. So depending on what the business model is that you want, you get visibility into all these different aspects of working with an outsourced partner for your manufacturing. Within process manufacturing, this is really on the execution side of process manufacturing, we now have some better screen capabilities particularly for people who are operating in a clean environment. So the ability to just more easily touch the right parts of the screen to approve or to reject something or to query up or enter information. If you're doing a dispensing operation, it just makes it easier to use this as a touch device in that context. In discrete MES, we introduced a capability called eKanban in 12.2, and we've continued to enhance that for customers who are very focused on lean manufacturing operations. One example of what we've done many enhancements to it, but one example is that you can receive goods into a sub-inventory. So if you're receiving goods, you don't have to receive them directly into the Kanban location where they're going to be consumed, but you can receive them into a local sub-inventory like a storage area or something that you model, and then have them be distributed to the point of use from there. So in discrete manufacturing, we also support better visibility and controls during work order execution. So you can you display barcodes as the supervisor. You can prevent the completion for work orders if there's still some open component requirements on the work order. So a number of things that improve work order execution as well. The next area to talk about is enterprise asset management. And in this area, we have a new command center. So what this lets you do is maximize asset availability and quickly resolve exceptions, and to be able to make sure you have the right materials on hand to do the repairs when they're scheduled. So a little bit more detail on that. Some of the assets that you may be maintaining require shutdown in order to maintain them, and you might want to zero in your focus on the assets requiring shutdown so that you can expedite work on those assets because they'll be more impactful to the overall business. You can make sure your resources are scheduled. You can visualize how your resources are going to be consumed so you can optimize your resource scheduling to avoid delays or cost overruns, needless overtime and so forth, to make sure that you're cost effective in the way you're applying your resources. And you can get early visibility to material requirements that are coming up as part of the maintenance operations that you have, so that if you're going to need some spare parts at a certain point in the future, you can have the visibility to that to ensure that the right spare parts are available at the scheduled time for the maintenance operations to occur. We've had a mobile maintenance app for a long time. Recently, we made it work as a disconnected app. We now have some new flows inside that app. So you basically have a single express work order transaction that you can do where you can report the resources that were consumed on the maintenance activity. You can record the material that was needed. You can enter quality results from tests that you ran as part of the maintenance activity. You can complete it and complete the work order all from the smartphone, basically an expedited transaction flow. You can add debrief information. You can add charge time information as well. We also make it easier to accumulate and calculate charge time. You can basically have a start and stop timer on the mobile app, so you can kind of clock into your maintenance activity and clock out, let it keep track of the time for you, and so you can review your calculated hours and then submit those as part of the maintenance transaction. We've also enhanced the screens that you use to track work order execution to improve the capabilities based on customer enhancement requests. So we do things like show more fields around reflecting asset criticality and the shutdown details, and we've added multilingual support for failure data and asset status. Now, turning to service, a number of important things in the service area, and this will all seem familiar because you are familiar with these concepts in your consumer life. But what we support now is having a service contract that does usage billing and also provides a group plan. So features like essentially like family plans. So you can define a contract that says for all of the copiers, you can have an overall allowance for the counters that on all your copiers, and it has a service contract based on the total across a number of individual counters and devices. So you record that usage, and we can bill you for service based on the usage. And if you don't use your full allowance, we support essentially like rollover minutes. You can support rollover counter values to a subsequent billing period if you want to structure your contract in that way. We also have better handling of the case where you don't get a successful meter reading for one reason or another. So you can set it up so that if there is no meter reading in a period, you can either delay the invoice until a certain point, or you can invoice based on a default or a minimum if there is no meter reading. We also support more detail in the service request definition, so you can now supply alternate contacts. You could have the contact's phone number and have an alternate phone number, things like that to allow more robustness in your interaction with the person you're trying to provide service to. We have improvements to the schedulers for field service scheduling, so that if you're doing real-time dispatch of something that has to go on now, you can actually take the traffic data and the GPS location into account when you're planning when the service person is going to be able to arrive. You can also do future-based service task assignment based on historical traffic patterns. So if you're trying to plan service for the next several days, you don't know what the traffic specifically is going to be, but you know what traffic patterns generally are at those times of day. You can take that into account now as you make schedules for your service technicians. You turn into human capital management. The focus in this area for a long time has been on building out all of our self-service capabilities in smartphones, so that with the goal that you could do everything you need to do as an employee or as a manager on behalf running EBS HCM from a smartphone. And we've really kind of rounded out some of the last few functions that we really didn't have in smartphones. So being able to update a document of record, you want to upload a new passport or something like that, you can do that. You can update payment methods. You can view your current benefits. We have some year-end reporting that's analogous to the W-2 reporting that we do in the United States. We have the corresponding documents like that for India and Canada. And there's more approvals that you can handle within the applications now. So this really rounds out the set of things you can do with mobile human resources. So really anything that an employee or a manager needs to do, you can roll out these mobile apps to them, and they really don't even need to log in to the standard transaction system with the conventional full screen interfaces. In time cards, we've made a number of enhancements just for operational efficiency of time cards. It's possible for a mobile user with a time card to just copy their previous time card. That way they can kind of copy it and make a few changes as opposed to having to re-enter a bunch of information. So that helps the user be more efficient. And at an administrator level, you can auto-generate time cards. So you may have a population of employees where there's an assumed time card. For example, you're going to have a shutdown over a holiday period, and you want to automatically generate a time card for everybody in the organization to record vacation during the shutdown period, rather than having everybody individually have to create that time card. So we now support that kind of use case. In payroll, we now support the ability to issue a consolidated third-party payment. So as part of your payroll operations, you may be accumulating payments, let's say to a child support agency or something like that, from a number of different payees. And this way you can consolidate all of that and create a single report about who all of the payments are for and send that off to the payee rather than doing individual transactions for each of the payees. Probably the most important thing that affects the HCM area in this time frame, and it's part of something that affects a broader set of areas, is what we call the person data removal tool. And this is designed to help remove sensitive personal information for selected people. The requirement comes from some regulatory demands that are being raised, particularly in Europe, but elsewhere, around data privacy. And so as part of helping customers comply with those regulations, we've provided a tool that helps you remove certain information about people, essentially to forget the people if under certain circumstances. So what this does is it doesn't actually delete the row of data for that person, because that would cause problems with the system, but it overwrites irreversibly the information about who that employee was. It applies to not just employees, but to contingent workers, applicants, people who may not just be your regular employees. It also applies to customers and suppliers. So you may have customer contacts or supplier contacts that you're tracking in the system, and you may need to essentially forget their contact information or the details about those people as well. So it applies more broadly than just HR. What it lets you do is to, as part of your compliance program with these regulations, identify in your environment who are the right people to remove. And we then run checks to make sure that that set of selected people don't have active transactions. So you're not going to remove somebody that you owe money to and are about to pay. You're not going to remove somebody who's a current employee with a task assignment, things that are, you want to make sure you don't accidentally remove somebody with essentially an open transaction. And assuming they pass those checks, we'll then go ahead and remove that sensitive data for that person, and let you be more completely in compliance with those regulations. So we do this with the standard data that we store that we know represents personally sensitive information, but we also make this mechanism